cool. And that's an idea. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys coming here. Like I said, this is such a cool thing for me to play in what was my local guitar center. So I'm using Ableton Live. I think you guys can see that over here. And I've been using Ableton Live, actually, interestingly, since it was in its alpha incarnation. And I remember talking to the guys at Ableton and saying, hey, I'm warp markering whole tracks. And they're like, and I'm not going to try to do bad German accent, them saying, what are you doing that for? And I said, well, because I'm using it to perform electronic music live. So I was actually one of the first users of this program, and was using it in this very strange way to begin with, and then they sort of caught on to that might be a cool idea to use it to play completed pieces of music and you know, fills and other things and stems and things live. So I use Ableton Live as my host DAW when I'm performing. I use different things in the studio. I'll talk to you about some of them as well. And over a period of many years, I've developed something that is known as a stutter edit technique. And honestly, this started a long time ago. And actually, because I have an audience, I'm going to tell you guys how this began. When I was about 14 years old, I was a tape op at a local studio where I grew up called Omega Studios in Rockville, Maryland. And being a classical music brat from the age of 6, let's say, give or take, I was very interested in more avant-garde classical music. I had a very progressive teacher as a kid. His name was Satirius Vlahopoulos. And at the very young age of 6 and 7 years old, I was being introduced to composers like Bartók and Stravinsky and even guys like Penderecki. You know, it was doing my hand-in exercises and stuff, but there was no sort of Brahms and Beethoven for me when I was a little kid. And so at any rate, this teacher exposed me to some very interesting sort of modalities and ways of thinking about music, and eventually exposed me to things like musique concrète and you know, some of the early electronic godfathers, John Cage, Ian Xenakis, these guys. And so as a young kid, I was studying classical music and studying composition and counterpoint theory and all these sort of things. And I began to tape op as a teenager in high school before I went to the Berklee School of Music, and I went at the tender age of 15. I still can't believe I did that. And at Omega Studios, they had an old half-inch tape machine, and we used to record to 24-track and then take things and bounce them to tape. And this is prior even to the terminology house music, if you can imagine that. It didn't exist at that time. No one had a cell phone either. So at any rate, I used to sit at night with a grease pencil and a razor blade and a half-inch Stutter machine, and I used to print things to this tape machine. And I'd do it for hours and hours. And I would take and I would measure out lengths of tape. And I would say, okay, at 120 beats per minute, 8 feet is a bar. And I would figure that out by, you know, taking and scrubbing the tape head across the play head until I found the point where the kick drum attack was. I'll never forget the invention of the D8 of the DAW was like probably the greatest moment, most defining moment in my